Can you tell us a little bit more about when you and your husband had divorced, and you had to co-parent together? How did you, first of all, take care of yourself? How did you kind of pick up your own pieces of what had happened through your marriage and divorce process?
That's a really great question, actually, because yeah, I think the first thing it's like, I got very fit. I don't know, I think a lot of people tend to do that. I really, I did kind of start taking care of myself. And the next thing that I did for me was start this business because the main thing that I needed to do to pick up the pieces was figuring out how I was going to survive this co-parenting relationship for the rest of my life. And so that's what I did. I kind of developed and figured out strategies to make this tolerable for me and for my daughter.
Hmm. Yes. And how was it for your daughter? How did your daughter handle the process of going from you and your husband being married to now you're in two separate places? Like what was that like for
Yeah.
her?
So for her, it was actually a very long, drawn out process. Unfortunately, some of these really, yucky divorces can just get very drawn out. And she was at an age where kind of like it wasn't immediate. She didn't really notice things happening. It was a little bit over time. And so I think the impact on her was a little bit more subtle, which is also why I thought it was so important for me to get on top of this because I wanted to be able to help her through these little things. Sometimes the big things, you can see it, you can kind of deal with them, but these little things. So, for example, I think for my daughter, the way that it kind of manifested was she became like the good little soldier.
Mm.
So because my ex and I were not working well together, she was the good one, right? She didn't want to make more problems for us. And now I would say what I do see is now that my ex and I get along a lot better, she actually is safer to come to us with some more real issues that she's dealing with.
Yeah, that's really good.
So one of the values of really having a more effective co-parenting relationship, of
Yeah.
course.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned that now your co-parenting relationship is a lot
Mhm.
healthier than it used to be. What would you say
Yeah.
led to that shift?
I get asked that all the time. And, I want to say, well, look, this is what I do for a living. So I got really good at it. And, but at the same time, what I did was I do follow my own principles and I really was consistent with them. Now, my ex, I don't know what he would say. And it almost doesn't really matter because ultimately what I did was I set myself up by being consistent and being the kind of quality co parent that I wanted
Hmm.
in him was the kind of co-parent that I became, and I showed up that way all the time. And I think that sort of created a safe environment. It created an environment almost of trust, right? It was very clear how I was going to show up.
Hmm.
So yeah, I used I all the things that I teach. That's what I do. It's how I live it, and it works for us now.
Can you kind of put that into a story, whether it's your own story or maybe a story of a client that you've worked with? So tell about what the relationship was like between when it was not healthy or when it was toxic between the two co-parents, and then how it evolved to something, and what does healthy look like now?
Yeah. So an example, right, of a relationship when I'll use my own example because we're talking about it, right? When we first were going through this, literally, if I said up, he would say down. If I said left, he said right. Everything was my fault. Everything was an issue. Anything that we had to work out, if there was one change to maybe the agreement that we had, we were going to change a visit or I mean, I wouldn't even have ventured there. And my clients, that's what their experience is too. It's like you don't even bother trying to co parent because it just makes it worse for you.
Mm.
Asking for just help with something really little becomes an opportunity for that person to take a bite out of you or hurt you in some way or try to use or take advantage. That is not healthy, right? And so what ends up happening is when you're sort of faced with someone who's doing these things to you start to kind of posture and protect yourself. And now we engage in certain behaviors back. And that just creates a bigger conflict. And I was absolutely doing that. There's a lot of things that I did in the beginning that were not conducive to reducing conflict. And so, what I did over time, COVID was actually a really big change because with COVID, all the rules went out the window. So, whatever agreement we had, nobody and no judge, no courts weren't open, nobody was listening to the issues. So
Mm.
now, in this environment where I really had the opportunity to take full advantage of the situation. I could have, overridden a lot of the scheduling things. I didn't.
Hmm.
I actually stood in my power. I stand at, kept and continued co-parenting in the way that felt right for my daughter. And that I think started to create a little bit of trust, right? That even in this environment where I could have caused harm, I did not.
Mhm.
And so now what happens is the healthiness of this, we're not friends, we don't hang out, we don't chat every day. However, when there's issues that need to be dealt with, we can get in a room, we can talk to teachers, we can talk to doctors, and we can actually deal with the issue. So I would say the healthy co-parenting relationship now looks like a really good
Hmm.
business with your child. I hate to say it this way, as the product, but right, your child's the bottom line. And being able to focus on that and put all the other stuff aside makes for a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's good.